advantage out of it. We will try to see what best can be done about this. By the way, I know I am not a professor by profession like your Professor Govindaraj. I am a plain simple consultant, but I also like to teach. And since I like to teach, and since I am not a professor, I follow different set of rules. So I would prefer that if you have got any questions at any point of time, please do not hesitate to ask questions. You can shoot your questions anytime and we can discuss those particular things. And secondly, and the most important is, we shall not have a textbook as our reference for our meeting, for our discussion. We will talk about how exactly the risk management is done in the industry, like companies like Larsen and Toubro or Adani or Kirloskar Brothers, or you can talk about companies which are like Hindustan Motors, even though they are no more there, but they are having they are still having a lot of projects going on. So we will talk about how these particular companies actually do the project management, and we will talk about the reflection of the project management into the theory, and that is how we shall go ahead. Of course, on the web, it is going to be difficult to have each and every question taken up, but I encourage you that please do not hesitate to have your questions. You can shoot your questions. Best way is through the chat. If I miss that particular question, because I can't have all the windows open at all the time, but I will request Professor Govindaraj to keep on monitoring the chat window, and maybe
Yes,
he
sir.
can let me know once in a while if there is a question. So we will make sure that we will try to have the best possible interaction. Now, what I'm going to do from this point onwards is I'm going to share my presentation, and of course, presentation is a basic placeholder, is a basic backbone. We can, of course, deviate from that particular thing as well. So let me share my presentation, and let's start with that particular presentation over here. So I have got over here my presentation. I'm making it in a format which is called as the PowerPoint presentation. And therefore, let's make sure that we will talk on this subject which is called as risk management. Now, when you talk about strategic initiatives, or when you talk about mega projects, the projects which are more than 1,000 crore or even more than that, the huge massive projects, you might be aware that the projects are normally done under the two frameworks. So before we start and before we go ahead, let's make sure that which framework are we going to talk about. So let me make these particular things easy to understand. Let's talk about one power plant, a power plant in Chandigarh known as Rajpura Power Plant. It's a power plant which is being established by a company called as Larsen and Toubro. Now, Larsen and Toubro is going to set up that particular plant, and the total value of that particular plant is somewhere around 2,500 crores. Now, when L&T, Larsen and Toubro, decides to go ahead with the project management of this particular plant, they have got two possible frameworks. They may decide to go with either of them. They have decided to go with one specific, but any big project of this nature, you can follow two frameworks. One framework is known as, which is there in front of you, is known as PMBOK framework, or the Project Management Framework, or the Project Management Institute Framework, PMI framework, and the other one is known as PRINCE2. So let's make sure that we are right in a proper way, understanding these particular things up. So one can go ahead with the Project Management Institute's framework known as Pmbok or the PMBOK, which stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge, or the second available option is called as PRINCE2. Now, PRINCE2 is a short form. It stands for projects. So the PRO here stands for project. In over here stands for projects in controlled environment, and that's a worldwide standard as well. And both these standards, PMBOK standard as well as the PRINCE2 standard, are worldwide. By the way, both of them, they handle the risk management equally well. Both of them are doing the risk management fantastic, but both of them follow a different methodology for management of the risk, even though end result of both of them is expected to be the same, but we are not going to talk about Prince2 framework over here. In our discussion, we are going to talk about a framework which is called as PMBOK framework, or the project management framework. Now, having understood this, having talked about this, we will at any particular point in time, I would rather do this. Whenever I come across one basic concept in PMBOK, I will like to draw the equivalence of that with the Prince2 as well. But the question is, do you really have to know about PMBOK or the Prince2, or do you really have to know that there are two frameworks? I will put it this way. It's a good idea to know, because not all the companies follow PMBOK framework or the PMI framework. Not all the companies follow Prince2 framework, but 100% of the companies across the world, including India, do follow one of them. And if you come across any specific project which is being followed by, let's say, Prince2, in that case, you should be aware of it, that there is a framework which is different than the other framework, but nevertheless, end results are expected to be the same. Just to give a very top level distinction between them, a PMBOK framework, or known as PMI framework, has got origin in the US of A, while the Prince2 framework has got origin which is UK. In India, generally a rule of thumb, you can't really say it's a rule, but a rule of thumb. In India, the private parties, the private companies like GMR, GVK, GVC, Larsen & Toubro, Adani, the private companies normally prefer to go with PMI, while the government initiatives like NTPC or the GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited, or NHAI, most of the government projects prefer to go the Prince2 way. Now, why do they do that? Well, we will not go into the details of that, but let's make sure one point that you're going to remember in mind is there are two types of frameworks. Our focus is going to be on PMI framework, but there is a second framework as well, for which I'm sure there is a lot of information available on the web. We shall draw the equivalences as we come out there. But let's keep that in the background, and let's start over here with 5 stories. Now, why stories? Because I think to understand the risk management, one should appreciate the risks, and one should appreciate what can go wrong with the projects of this sort. So what I will do over here is just to get that particular feeler, just to get that particular feel that what is risk management and what is at stake financially, operation-wise, marketing-wise, what is at stake. Let's therefore understand 5 major projects which are contemporary, which are going on in the world right now. Let's understand these particular projects, and let's understand a kind of a qualitatively, let's understand what's the risk behind them. So the first project I will take over here is of a company called as Larsen & Toubro, and this project is known as Hyderabad Metro Projects, or Hyderabad Metro Project. I don't know whether you have been to Hyderabad or not, but Hyderabad has started with a metro system. One line is already operational between the 2 stations known as LB Nagar and Kukatapalli. Of course, the other lines are getting established as well. But Larsen & Toubro is the company involved with this particular project. And let me tell you the difficulties with this particular project, just to get a perspective on the risk. First of all, Hyderabad Metro, the entire project is owned by Larsen & Toubro on the basis which is known as BOOT. I'm sure those of you who are the finance specialization will know this particular one: build, own, operate, and transfer. What it means is the complete metro is going to be built by L&T with their own money. They may raise these finances from anywhere, but with their own money, they will build it, they will operate it, they will own it, and 25 years later, 25 years in future, they will hand over the entire metro to the local self-government. Now, look at it this way. Where is the investment going to come from? investment is going to come from Larsen and Toubro right now. How much is the tune of investment? More than 15,000 crores worth of investment is going to be involved in this project. And how are the returns going to come? The returns will come over a 25 years period. What they will charge to the users of metro in Hyderabad. That means your money is going to get involved now, invested now, while your payments are going to come over the 25 years period, and you have got no idea what may happen in 25 years period. Well, you can't say you don't know what's going to happen in next 25 years period. You have to actually identify, you will actually have to find out what may happen, what are the risks involved, what can actually dampen their revenues, where the things can go wrong. And for each of the things that can go wrong, they have to have a plan for that, and unless and until they do what is called as ERM, enterprise-wide risk management for this project, they will not be able to get advantage, they will not be able to actually get any profitability or the returns on this particular project. So look at it this way. Let me take a very simple example, just on the basis of this so that we understand. I'm sure you are aware of Delhi Metro, and I'm sure you are also aware that recently, few months back, there were elections in Delhi, and one of the prospective chief ministers who was contesting election, who incidentally won the election as well, he declared that all the women can travel in Delhi Metro free of charge. Now look, who owns Delhi Metro? Delhi Metro is not owned by the Delhi government. What right a person has got to say that women will get free travel in Delhi Metro? Well, ultimately, who is going to foot the bill? Is the government going to pay for that particular one? Because operational costs, somebody has to pay for that. Now, here is where the risks can come in future for L&T. Like, government may do something else. They may have a ceiling on the rate of travel or rate of the ticket, and well, they will not be able to recover their cost. So all these particular risks, company like L&T will have to actually factor in. And that process with which they do that with a framework, and our job today is to talk about that framework. Let me take a simple example. Second example, I'm sure if you are reading the newspapers, you are aware of this. If you are not reading the newspapers, let me do the honor of telling you something that happened quite recently, around a year and a half back. There is a country nearby to India called as Maldives. And the country has got a capital city called as Malé, and there is a beautiful airport which was established, which was created by an Indian company called as GMR. On what basis? The airport was constructed by GMR, airport was operated by GMR, airport is controlled by GMR, and they were supposed to recover the cost through the operational expenses that they are going to bill to the airlines, to the government, to the passengers, so on and so forth. Suddenly, out of a blue, nobody had an idea. Nobody actually knew about it. Out of a blue, suddenly, government of Maldives comes out and says that, please pack up your bags and go. You no more own that project. They were asked to decamp instantaneously, immediately. You have not recovered yet any of the investments that you have made, but the government of that particular country tells you to go. Hey, you have to go. Well, what happens after that? What happens after that is a big story, which I'm sure you must have been keeping tab on the things that come in the business newspapers. GMR had the plan up their sleeve, and GMR ensured that they got their rights back. But they had factored into their planning process when they established this particular process. They already did that, and they were able to take advantage because the framework of the risk management that they had established, they knew things of this nature may happen, and if these things happen, what are the things that they are going to actually activate, how they are going to initiate. Well, I'm sure your professors, like our friend Professor Govindaraj, must be very active in giving you the homeworks. But as you know, I am not a professor, and therefore I don't give the homeworks. And whenever I give the homework, my homeworks are really good. So what I'm going to tell you is this. After this session gets over, I think you are going to go on YouTube and look out for one beautiful project, which is a documentary, and YouTube has it. And that project is known as Building Up of A380. For those of you who are aware, good, they know what A380 is. For those who are not aware, let me tell you, the largest aircraft in the world today is an aircraft called as Airbus A380. It can carry 800 passengers at a time. Now, how this aircraft was built, there is a beautiful documentary, and that particular documentary is available on YouTube. Have a look at it, what kinds of risks that they went into and how those particular risks were tackled, because you will be able to see the correspondence between what we are talking about and what they did. So that was one of the examples over here, which I wanted to make sure that a mega project of these sorts, if there is no proper risk planning, companies may go bankrupt complete. And therefore, to ensure that you are capable of taking care of any risks that can arise, one must follow a framework which we are going to narrate, which we are going to talk about as we go further. Well, give me 5 minutes. I will talk about 2 more projects, and this will actually create a backgrounder. And with this particular background, let's talk about a kind of a framework that is necessary for the enterprises to undertake the risk management in projects. Now, one of the projects, incidentally, the project is about in Pakistan, not about, it's in Pakistan. And I think if possible, you should read more on this particular project. It stands for China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. If you're aware of this particular project, I tell you, it's a phenomenal project. Well, it doesn't matter, it's an enemy project, it doesn't matter, it does impact us too. I think therefore we should be spending a lot of energy on knowing this particular project as well. Now, what's the whole idea? Look, I'm sure you are aware of geography of China. So if you look at a Chinese map, of course, my drawing is not that great. So imagine this is Chinese map. This is the coastal area of China. You can notice that Hong Kong and etc. is over here. This is the only part which is available to China in terms of sea operation. While rest of the China, consider this part of China, is landlocked. So the Chinese trade has to come via sea route. If they have to use, they have to come on this side. The economic corridor that they want to have a corridor through China, through Pakistan, through Kashmir, of course, through Pakistan, through Balochistan, through Sindh, and up to the end result over here near Karachi. The moment you have got this particular economic corridor, the road and the railway network, extremely fast railway network, a lot of trade can take place through this particular port as well. And one of the biggest projects in the world, which can change the economic situation in the world as well. Well, by the way, what's the risk involved? Tremendous risk. The whole of Balochistan, there is an unrest. The whole of Sindh, there is an unrest. Of course, you know, the whole of Kashmir, there is an unrest as well. Still, the project is important for the stakeholders and also to the people, those who are against this particular project. The projects of this particular sort just cannot be undertaken unless people have done, unless the project managers are done the risk management. Well, I'm going to take you through a very nice project. We are going to talk about it and then we'll start with our framework. The project is known as Panama Canal. Now, in the classroom, this would have been a really great fun. I would have asked this question. Okay, how many of you know Panama Canal? Let me ask that question even now. But even if you raise your hand or even if you say the thumbs up, it's difficult for me to really know how many of you are aware of Panama Canal or not. But it's one of the engineering marvel started 100 years back But I am not talking about a project which was 100 years back. Even that in itself was a great project. I'm talking about 100 years later, this project was revitalized, was revamped. And I'm talking about that. But before that, let me talk about Panama Canal as such. Now, this is a small schematic diagram of Panama Canal. You know, there is the Atlantic Ocean on this side. Let me use the pen over here. So there is the Atlantic, I'm sorry. There is the Atlantic Ocean on this side, and there is a Pacific Ocean on this side, and 32 kilometers of land in between. If Panama Canal was not to be there, you have to take the detour completely to South America or to the Latin American continent. In fact, you go almost near to the Antarctic and then go up or there. Enormous cost would be involved to ship the material across this particular two parts of the continent. USA, for example, where to send from western coast to the eastern coast, it will have to detour the entire Latin American continent, and therefore 100 years back, French engineers thought of cutting the land in the country of Panama and making a canal of 32 kilometers where the ships can just travel through this canal, and you are from this part to this part, you are just there in half a day's time or maybe a day's time. But what's the problem? The problem is the sea levels at both the sides are the same. However, there is a hill and the ships have to taken above the hill and then brought down again. And imagine each ship weighs dead weight without the cargo. Each of the ships weigh 20,000 tons. So imagine 20,000 tons to be lifted, taken, and then put it over here. That's the engineering marvel. And let me just show you in a schematic diagram how this particular thing works out, how the ships are moved. So I will just play a small video here. A ship comes in, the lock is closed, water is filled in, ship is taken up at a higher level through a Gatun lake. Then on the other side, the ship is brought down to the Miraflores lake, and from one end to the other end, it has traveled. An engineering marvel. Now, 100 years back, this canal was built. In 2014, they realized the canal was very narrow, and the ships that we have got nowadays are much wider than that. And therefore, 2014, they introduced a new project called as expansion of Panama Canal. And that expansion of the Panama Canal was undertaken. It took 4 years and went through a lot of problems. But each and every of this particular problem, the enterprise risk management team had already envisaged through the framework of the PMBOK, and as and when these particular risks happened, some of them happened, some of them did not. But as and when these particular risks happened, they were able to take care of that as well. Now we are looking at what is a kind of a framework that is required to be taken care of. So here is where we are going to start with the framework. Well, let me give the agenda, what we are going to do in our class today. Am I going to talk all for this particular 2 hours? Even though I love the sound of my voice, I'm not going to do that. What we are going to be doing is this. I will take half an hour. I will explain you this particular framework, and then we'll take hands-on. What is hands-on? By the time we finish our 2-hour session, you would have some tools with you. Particularly, you will have 2 tools over here, and those particular 2 tools, we will mark them over here on our framework. Those particular 2 tools are going to be called as quantitative risk analysis tools. If you are going to be in finance or in marketing, put it this way, if you are going to be a manager who needs to take decisions under uncertainty, in that case, these tools will come in extremely handy, as well. And I am not going to demonstrate them only. I will make sure that you will also do you are hands-on with this particular tool. So what's our agenda? First point on the agenda is I will explain you the framework. Second point on the agenda is I will explain you qualitative aspect. I will explain you. Oh, I think somebody is sending. Is that Govind? You have sent me the WhatsApp, is it? Govind, can you just unmute your mic? I couldn't get your message.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Since we are using the free version of Zoom, so it automatically disconnects every 40 minutes. So once it disconnects, we'll re-establish the connection, sir.
Okay, so we'll have an official break.
Yes.
At every 40 minutes. Okay, fine. No problem.
Okay, sir.
Fine, fine. But I couldn't see your message, but I saw that over here. So anyway, fine. Thank you.
No problem, sir.
So we will have three things on our agenda. Agenda number one, we will talk about the framework. Number two, we will talk about the qualitative risk assessment, qualitative risk management. And number three, we will talk about quantitative risk management, and we will ensure that two tools. I think you should have a pretty good understanding of this particular two tools. Number one of them is going to be called as decision tree. Let's see how fun we can have with that. Number two is going to be called as Monte Carlo simulation. In fact, in the industry today, one of the prime most requirement for the finance guys is to be able to actually create a Monte Carlo simulation, risk or otherwise. And therefore, these are the 3 points on our agenda. So what I will do here is, let's have this particular agenda in the back of our mind. If we do get disconnected in 40 minutes, we will take a 10-minute break and we'll restart again. But let's start over here with the first thing first. And that particular first thing is this. For any mega project or any non-mega project, you must have a proper systematic approach. And the systematic approach of the project management, risk management, has got 4 elements. Element number 1 is going to be called as we must identify the risks. Now, you will notice there is a massive problem. How is the problem massive? Let me take an example of this particular problem. Let me just go one step ahead and come back. Incidentally, by the way, after the session gets over, I will share this particular presentation along with annotations which I have got. I will send it across to Professor Govindraj and he will share with you in case if you want to have it. It does not only contain the slides which I am showing you, it does contain a lot of other things as well. So probably you may find it useful. Let me therefore take you one step further and let me put you in this particular situation right now. Now let's take this particular slide one step further. Well, you are seeing a Google map over there. If you observe it closely, you will notice that Google map that you have got in front of you is a map of south of Mumbai. So this particular part is south of Mumbai. This is a place in Mumbai which is known as Nhava Sheva, if you are aware of. Good, if you are not, forget it. And this is the Alibag, Revadanda, that particular area over here. What I'm going to do over here is, listen to this carefully. It will take some time to, it may get disconnected, but listen to this and put yourself into the shoes of a project manager, okay? Listen to this. Now, Mumbai is a kind of a giant city and the only giant city in the world where the massive airport happens to be in the middle of the city, bang in the middle of the city, where every 1 minute there is an aircraft landing or taking off, and there is a sea of humanity around this particular airport. One accident, and it's going to be a calamity. It's going to be a massive disaster. No mega city in the world likes to have the airport in the middle of the world, middle of the city. And therefore, planners of Mumbai, 20 years back, identified a location for the new airport. And that particular new airport, if I were to show it on a map, that particular airport will be over here, the place which is called as Panvel. 20 years back, 25 years back, they decided to have that particular airport at Panvel. What has happened? There is a compound wall, but airport has not gone there. Because those who are the movers and shakers, those who are the bold and beautiful people of Mumbai, refuse to go to far away place like Panvel with a simple thing that from Dubai to come to Mumbai takes 2.5 hours. From Panvel to come to South Mumbai over here will take more than 3 hours. And therefore people don't want to move in over there. However, 6 months back, a new idea was floated, and the idea was this: the new airport will come here. Distance between South Mumbai to this is 19.2 kilometers. Aircrafts will land over here. There is ample space available. Aircrafts will land over here, and government will build a cable-stayed bridge.